Okay, so I saw this video from Ideal, and it mirrors some of the thoughts that I have a lot too. So let's watch it.
You don't want a new MMORPG. You think you do, but you don't. This might sound stupid if you're a fan of MMORPGs. I mean, if there's one thing gamers love, it's games. And if there's another thing gamers love, it's bacon. Because bacon is epic sauce. One does not simply...
I get that there's like a revival of the idea of this kind of cringe right now where people are sitting around and like obviously over animating. I think that perhaps we should go down to the mall. Like I get that that's a thing right now, but to have lived through it and to have been there when it happened, to have seen bacon flavored gum and bacon scented Band-Aids and all of those kinds of things, let me tell you, baby, it was great. It was great when people said "roar." That's "I love you" for dinosaur or in dinosaur. That was great. Those were good times. Those were beautiful, simpler times where I didn't know that you could be cringe. I just thought that you had to say the right words, and then all of a sudden you were a cool guy. Those were simpler.
So you resist
simpler
bacon.
Times.
Either you love bacon, or you're wrong. But MMORPGs aren't like other games.
Don't talk to me before I get my
100
coffee.
hours at most running through a campaign before dropping it and switching to the next game. Most MMO players will spend months, if not years, and even decades in some cases, playing the same game day in and day out. Playing these games becomes this nasty, unkickable habit, like smoking a cigarette. Unfortunately, doing your weekly Blackwing Lair lockout doesn't make you look nearly as cool as smoking a cig does. When a new MMORPG...
That is the interesting thing about video games, you know, is that it really doesn't make you look that cool. Like, they've tried over and over again to pitch gamers as athletes in this you know, pro gamer section. And they have failed, in my opinion, over and over again. All of those kids are pasty and thin and pale and just the people who you don't really wish you looked like. It's, you know, rock and roll is one of those things where they have really good branding of what you look like when you do it. You wear the leather jacket, you got the sunglasses on, you have the cool guitar and everything, and you're up there just absolutely rocking. It draws a lot of people in. Games are so addictive that they don't need that sort of look. But nobody's dressing up cool to play video games, that's for sure. I'm wearing basically pajamas right now.
Tries to enter the market, it doesn't just have to capture the hearts and minds of players by being a good game. It has to convince those players to abandon what they're already super invested in.
Yeah.
And the even deeper problem than that is the people they're trying to appeal to don't even know what they want.
Yeah.
Hell, I don't know what I
Let's sum it up really quickly, and I'll try to put my thoughts out there at the beginning of this, and we'll continue to watch, and we'll see if he can change my mind or if he falls in line with it. I think that here's the deal with MMORPG players. MMORPG players are constantly remembering the time in their lives where they discovered a new game that they fell in love with, that they then went on to play thousands and thousands of hours in. And over that thousands and thousands of hours, they became burned out with something that they at one point in time loved. So then they try to go around and find another game that recaptures that feeling, but because they've already experienced so many of those mechanics in a game prior, there's really not a whole lot for other games to actually give them that gives them that new game kind of feeling, because a lot of MMOs are very similar in a whole lot of ways. And what you want is not a new game that does the things that you think the old game does better. What you want is the feeling you had when you thought that game was really good before you had pushed so far into it that you could feel the flaws, that you could tell when something bad happens, that you could feel how annoying it was to queue up with the same group of people every single week to do a dungeon that you're not going to get the drop from.
But I do know who I am, and thanks to a recently stolen election, I am still Idle, the president of MMORPGs. And with this hammer, I'm going to fix the genre.
The eagle screech, dude.
I am going to fix the genre that has been broken for far too long in the opinions of many. So I'm here to figure out what's wrong with you.
I already know what's wrong with me, dude. I don't need to help with that.
I can't take this guy seriously.
God?
I mean, bald, patchy facial hair, green tights, yuck. I hate this guy.
Why did he zoom in on his
I
dick
hate him
like
a lot.
that?
But
These moose knuckles, dude. Look at those. Look at those moose knuckles.
There's
Brother,
one thing I like about him.
don't show the
That's
shot,
his
man.
Beautiful shirt. Introducing Into the AM, the hottest apparel in
We're in an
menswear
ad.
since the introduction of the bolo tie in
Sometimes I don't even know.
1954. You've got hot graphic tees that can be as minimal or as loud as you want. Look at this beautiful tan shirt with the minimal palm tree design just in the corner. You know what?
I'm going to give you guys the secrets of how to dress right now, okay? You don't need graphic tees. You don't need fancy clothes. You don't need any of that. You need 3 things. You need jeans that look good. Specifically, that can be everything from, baggy jeans to really tight-fitting jeans. It just depends on what your style is and what your fit is and what you want to wear. You need jeans, preferably black, okay? You need inner layer. Inner layer can be t-shirt, button-down shirt, whatever you want. You need outer layer, some kind of jacket, jean jacket, leather jacket, hoodie, zip down, whatever you want to fit the occasion that you're going for. And that is everything, bro. Get some nice shoes to go with it, preferably like a Chelsea boot or like a Chukka boot. Wear those shoes in either black or brown, depending on how you want to look and how you want to present yourself. Boom, you look great every single time. Also, trim your facial hair up. I know this is rich coming from the guy with the patches starting to grow all the way up to his eyeballs, but
I'm actually going to go ahead and take this shirt.
Easy.
Thank
Easy
you very
peasy.
Much. Into the AM is more than just shirts, though. They have flannels, quarter zips, sweatpants, and more. Anything you can imagine, they've got. And if you like what you see, then I have good news. From now until December 8th, you can get the Cyber Monday deal, which will give you up to 60% off. You can use this deal to get a head start on gifts for the holidays, or just treat yourself, because hey, you deserve it. And if you click the link below right now or use the code IDLE at checkout, you can get an additional 10% off. So if you don't do it, you're actually just losing money.
I know you want to look this good.
Yuck, I don't like that, but I do like you. So go to the link in the description right now, please, and
Good on
get
him for
your
the performance,
awesome
dude.
apparel, please, now.
So the original creator of RuneScape, Andrew Gower, hi,
I'm
nice
scared.
to meet you. Idle, just released a new game called Brighter Shores. People were really excited to see the first new
Is this a Brighter Shores video? Have I reacted to this? No.
MMORPG from such a legendary guy. And then they played the game. And then they weren't excited anymore.
Yeah.
I played the game a lot, and I had thoughts that were mostly bad. And if you want to see those, you can check out my second channel, Idle Slop. Link in the description, or link in your butt. But the recent disappointments of games like Brighter Shores and Throne and Liberty and even New World got me thinking.
This is that thing that I keep talking about on streams all the time, that these games don't have a whole lot of presence in the industry. They don't feel like a new thing a lot of times. They feel like a new version of a thing that we can then play and get some new content out of. They feel like an expansion that's unofficial, like some kind of bootleg World of Warcraft expansion or some kind of bootleg Guild Wars 2 expansion or some kind of bootleg Enter MMO here expansion, RuneScape expansion in the case of Brighter Shores. And that's totally fine, and that's totally great, but you're not going to feel like you've discovered something amazing and brand new playing a quote-unquote bootleg expansion. It's just not going to happen. You're not going to find this new world that's really interesting, that stands out to you. You're constantly going to be comparing it to other things, and in that comparison is the thief of joy, and you're going to start to dislike what you have, because you're going to go, well, this other game did this better, or this other game did that better. Back when World of Warcraft came out, dude, no games had done that better. There was nothing that felt like that you could move around like that in, that you could press WASD and it felt that smooth, that you could tap those buttons and the attacks would come out that quickly, that you could run around and do quests in that kind of way. The world was laid out very, very thoughtfully. The towns were in specific places for specific reasons. The cities were really nice to get around in and had this massive sense of presence. There just wasn't anything like that. Same thing with RuneScape. When RuneScape came out, there wasn't anything that gave you the feeling of that, of playing this massive CRPG with all of these interesting quests and all of these things that you had to do to be able to finish those quests. There was just nothing there to fill that space. And so when you played it, you felt like you had discovered something that was changing the world. But after 15 years of playing it, you just feel like you're playing something that's wasted your time. And it has, because that's what video games do, but that's not a fault of the video game. It's not that the video game has gotten bad. It's not that you just need another video game. It's that you maybe have gotten to a point that you're kind of burned out because you've put 50,000 hours into one of these games.
What do we actually want from an MMORPG? Well, let's take a look at some MMO history, shall we? Can't really read my script from here, so this is gonna be tough. According to some experts, MMORPGs have been around for almost as long as the pyramids, and perhaps even not as long as that. And in that
Dude, can we kiss under the, or by the Bass Pro Shops pyramid? Can we do that?
time, there have been a lot of MMORPGs.
I don't know if you guys have ever been to Vegas, but Vegas is an interesting place. I'm assuming that's in Vegas. I don't know. But Vegas is an interesting place because they'll build these absolutely beautiful things there, and then they'll just slap branding on the front of it because everything is about money and making more money. It's very interesting, you know? This gondola ride brought to you by MGM Casinos.
Almost too many to count. 231. According to my data set, since 1997, there have been over 220 MMOs released. For context, there have been just about as many Fast and Furious movies released in the past 2 decades. If there were 220,
I watched like 11 of those Fast and the Furious movies, and I think they should have died with Paul. You know, that's when they started going off the rails for sure.
Fast and Furious movies. You might hear that number of MMORPGs and think, wow, they must be doing really well. That's a lot of new games. I thought there were only like 5 MMORPGs, but the truth is the data is a little bit darker than that. As you can see on this sick-ass pie chart I made, over 37% of MMOs have closed since 1997.
I'm surprised. I think that there have probably been 37% of the total release games that have closed at some point, but every time I look for an old MMO that I used to play as a kid that was terrible, it's still around. Fly for Fun is still around. Eternium Online or whatever that game was called is still around. Maple Story is still around. These games still exist, dude. People are still playing them. I don't know how they're making any money. Aggressive microtransactions for sure, actually, but this graph I think isn't the best to show us because you'd have to go and check to see if there are any servers actually still online because a lot of times they get bought and then re-put out because there's a market for them.
That's a pretty high failure rate.
Nostalgia's
to put
strong.
it into perspective, imagine if 37% of bridges you drove across exploded. You probably wouldn't drive over many bridges. This number could actually be
true.
even higher since a bunch of MMOs have closed down regional servers, now making them only available in Asia or
true.
Europe or North America and no longer available worldwide. But as cool as this pie chart is, it too doesn't tell the full story. Unfortunately, the Excel tutorial I watched only taught me how to make a pie chart. Oops, psych, egg on your face. I learned how to make bar charts too, or whatever this chart's called.
Bar graph.
It's pretty cool though, isn't it? On this chart, we can see the number of MMOs released versus the number of MMOs closed year
Got an
over
X and
year.
Y axis.
As you can see in the early and mid 2000s, things were going really great for MMORPGs. There's a lot.
I'll tell you guys, honestly, and I mean this, I'm here to make myself laugh at this point. It takes a long time for me to figure out what it is that makes myself laugh during a video, but that little tidbit of just that got me, dude.
A lot of blue here, and blue
That's all I care
is
about.
good. And
Mission
not a lot of
accomplished.
red, and red is bad. But then as we head into the early 2010s, things take a turn for the worse. We start to get a lot more closures until
Opens.
2014, which is the first year where closures actually outnumber the number of
Right in here, 2013, 2012, 2011 too as well. But this is the golden era of MMOs. This is where people thought still. Okay, so back here is where all the new MMOs start coming out. This is the first time that MMOs have ever really been successful. A whole bunch of them started existing. Very few of them actually became massive. We had World of Warcraft and old school RuneScape, which is, you know, just RuneScape 2 at the time. We had Adventure Quest, all these kinds of things starting to really pop up here that became super duper popular. Maple Story in this range. And all of the big companies started taking note. They said, this MMO thing is bussin', dude. So over here, they started to bring out like Final Fantasy 11, not really still like a major MMO player, but companies were still thinking they could do it. This is Guild Wars 2. This is in the Final Fantasy 14 Elder Scrolls Online kind of area where these companies are really taking their big swing at the WoW killers, dude. This is what we thought was going to happen. Here's where companies started to realize that MMOs were money sinks and didn't actually make them any money. And then in like this area is when microtransactions started to be discovered. And people were like, if we just throw some slop together, we can charge them a lot of money for a horse.
releases. And we
Here's horse armor in this range.
even get a couple of years where closures are the only thing that happens, which is pretty crazy to look at. But hey, look at 2024. Still going strong, no closures. Hope I don't jinx it. No one die. Full disclosure, I got all this data from Wikipedia, so someone could have edited in a new MMO called Butt Blaster 69, and I wouldn't have noticed.
That could be a real MMO,
I didn't check the data set, so do your own research. But what you can trust is that the failure rate of MMORPGs is alarmingly high, especially when you consider that MMOs are really expensive to make. That's why the only really big MMOs we've gotten lately have been from Amazon Game Studios, which is in part owned by a guy who can go up to space in a penis rocket.
Yeah, subsidized by just cells of everything from cookies to sex toys.
That's a special kind of wealth. But even with these AAA or even quadruple A MMORPGs, they really struggle to capture the market in any meaningful way. So what gives? Did people just forget how to make good MMORPGs? Have we forsaken the ancient texts handed down to us on top of Mount Olympus by Jeff Kaplan when he made the original World of Warcraft design? Yeah, maybe. I'm not here to tell you that New World was...
I think it's sort of a combination of all the things. You have to have a really special team of people in order to make a really good MMORPG. And I think that team has to be somewhat sizable because there's so many things that need an extreme attention to detail. Your world building has to be really, really good. Your lore has to be really, really good. The pacing of the game has to be really, really good. The encounters have to be really, really good. The group content has to be really, really good. The crafting has to be really, really good. The gathering skills have to be really, really good. The RPG mechanics have to be really, really good. The class identity has to be really, really good. All the while, you can't be stepping on the toes of other MMOs too much because then people will just start comparing you to all these different games that already exist. There are so many things going on that you need a really big team, but you need the cream of the crop to do it well. People forget that at the time when Blizzard was making World of Warcraft, their team was unstoppable. They had people on that team that were really good at making games. They had lots of knowledge of game theory and the concepts of what made it fun to continue on in an RPG because RPGs were the premier game of the time. People weren't going to school and learning how to make the next Fortnite and learning how to program microtransactions. They were sitting at their house and reading D&D books and like trying to figure out about new campaigns that they could run so that they could take this knowledge of how a game feels fun and feels alive and feels like something that isn't just a pre-programmed encounter-to-encounter mess. And that's what they would take into designing these games. And the original World of Warcraft wasn't perfect, but it was very, very good and very fun because of all of those things that I mentioned before. They were all done to an exceptional level, and that's why it's still thought of as being one of the best MMOs that's ever existed.
Actually a really good game. I've played New World. It was actually not a very good game. And Brighter Shores, which I've already mentioned a little bit, is just such a hollow experience that it's not worth playing when you could spend your...
Hollow is a very interesting way to put the term for Brighter Shores, to review it in one word, hollow. I liked the mechanics in Brighter Shores. I wish that in between the walls of the mechanics, there was a game that made me want to continue playing it, but there just wasn't. I felt like everything I was doing in the game was to unlock new mechanics, and once I unlocked the new mechanics, there was no reason to have those new mechanics. And that's the problem that I have with Brighter Shores in general.
Your time invested in much more...
Which is something that can totally be solved. RuneScape has really fleshed itself out over the years. It launched with a much smaller, still very good set of things to unlock and work towards. But RuneScape Classic wasn't that way. I mean, people were grinding out skills like crazy for no reason, basically, to make gold go up so that they could do nothing with it, so they could PvP realistically. There's no PvP in Brighter Shores, so that makes people not have a reason to get any kind of combat gear or risk things or have all this money grow or any of those things. You're just doing it for higher skill levels. And because there's no in-game concept for that, it puts a lot of people
established
off.
And fleshed out MMORPGs. But a much deeper problem than the games just not being all that good is that I'm not convinced there's a huge market for new MMOs in general.
Yeah.
As much as players and people like me might try and cope and say there is. The population of MMO players has shrunk dramatically thanks to games like League of Legends and Valorant and Fortnite that have taken the multiplayer scene and really dominated it for the past decade. MMOs used to be completely unique in terms of the multiplayer
There was nothing else you could do with it.
I mean, when World of Warcraft came out in 2004, Xbox Live was only 2 years old and still required a monthly fee, so it wasn't nearly as full as it is today.
Yeah.
So MMORPGs like World of Warcraft that did have a monthly fee would still become eternally popular.
Back in the day, man, you had to have people over to your house. You had to have a place to play video games where you and at least one friend could play video games. We had a next door neighbor who had, his room was rad, dude. He had like bunk beds. So there was basically, I don't know, 12 seats that you could have inside of his house without them collapsing, something like that. And he had this super dark room. He had VHS tapes lining the walls, all the VHS tapes for like Gundam and Rurouni Kenshin and Yu Yu Hakusho and Dragon Ball Z, all these cool animes, Akira, things that you had never heard of before. There were figurines sitting around, dude, and underneath his beds he had these boxes of video games. He had an Xbox, he had a PlayStation 2, he had multi-taps, he had a GameCube, and we'd all in the neighborhood haul up inside of his house and we'd all play these games together, whether it be Mario Party, The Sims 2, Mario Kart Double Dash, whether it was, Champions Return to Arms, whether it was Halo, it didn't matter, bro. We would all show up, and sometimes we would go down there, and they would just be playing Resident Evil just by themselves, and we'd all be watching terrified out of our minds. It was such a different kind of experience, and when I discovered RuneScape, it felt like a way to do that without having to sync up everybody's schedules. So I was playing RuneScape and being around all these different people, and it was just mind-blowing to think that everybody could be online back in the day, that I was in a game where all of these characters that I was seeing weren't just NPCs that gave you quests. They were other humans who were also in that game playing.
And there was also RuneScape, which was a big free-to-play game, and established games like Ultima and EverQuest that had already been going since the late 90s.
This looks
Back
crazy.
in my day, you couldn't just launch a Minecraft server with some friends or join a massive SMP server where you could talk to underage children. We had to talk to children our own age. And these days, you can just launch Roblox and find cool servers, like the one where you kill other people with a suite of fart-based attacks.
Jesus.
This is technology. MMOs were the truest
Children are lost.
multiplayer experiences you could get back then. And that's just not the case anymore. So the market has spread out. And the people who are still here, like me and presumably you if you're watching this video,
100%.
don't really know what we want. Yeah, it's easy to say, I want an MMO that is new and modern, but captures the feeling of the old days and the paradigms of classic MMORPGs. No. But that's like going to McDonald's and ordering a quarter pounder with cheese and a Happy Meal toy that will cure all of my anxiety.
It's like going to McDonald's and asking for a Wagyu beef steak. That's what it's like. You can't have the two things together. It's not what you think it is. I think that the idea of a modern MMORPG, how much it would cost to make that, it's not going to be able to subscribe, or it's not going to be able to survive on just subscription-based fees alone. And even if it was, I think that people would have problems with it being subscription-based. People are going to have problems with literally everything. You fill up 1 meter and 1 meter goes down. I've talked so much during this video already. And because you're filling up these different meters, you're having to make choices of what it is that you're doing well and what it is that you're not doing well. And the modern gamer, realistically, doesn't want these super, super slow, difficult to get through sort of things to work their way through inside of an MMORPG. Most people don't want to put 500 hours in a game to start getting to the quote-unquote good stuff. And even the people who say that they do, when those games come out, they don't do them. They don't play them.
Just doesn't it? Oh, wait, hold on, Mario Kart?
I want it to be really hard, but also really interesting and fun the entire time. I want it to feel like I've earned things, but also give me the power that I want now. I want the power scaling to never get out of whack, but I also want to feel like I'm becoming more powerful than the enemies. It's like these are mutually exclusive things unless we have some kind of paradigm shifting idea.
Toys are at Happy Meals now? And you can change out the wheels? This is so cool! Seriously though, here are just some of the MMORPGs that have released in the past decade. Shroud of the Avatar, a game made by Richard Garriott, the original creator of Ultima Online, which is considered by many to be the first true MMORPG. This game was supposed to be the spiritual successor to Ultima Online, but it ended up being more like the spiritual successor to a small college lecture, because
it's kind of like Rust.
That's about how many people play the game. You have WildStar, a sci-fi MMORPG made by some legendary RPG game designer.
Wasn't WildStar really popular though? Like, isn't that a very regretfully closed MMORPG?
And there's like Tim Kaine, who made the original Fallout game and tons of other classics.
Wow.
I played this game when it came out in 2014. It was genuinely very good. A lot of people didn't play it, and it shut down 4 years later. That's a real shame, but the market just wasn't there. You've already heard me talk about New World. It's not terrible, but it's also not good. And for that reason, despite it being one of the most hyped MMOs I can remember launching in recent memory, it didn't have the staying power people hoped it would. I mean, seriously, it's not even New World anymore. It's New World Aeternum, a solo-based action RPG. They don't even want to be an MMORPG anymore. But in all fairness, I get...
Let me ask you a question. And this is the God's honest truth of it. If you owned all the expansions and always had eternal subscriptions to World of Warcraft, RuneScape, Guild Wars 2, Final Fantasy XIV, Elder Scrolls Online, and New World, if you had those 6 games forever, they were always accessible to you and you could log into any of them at any time, do you think that you would really be looking around for other MMOs still? Like, do you think that maybe you're looking for something that probably already exists, but you just don't want to take the leap into those games? Because I think a lot of times that's what it is. Over the past few months, have found very little reason to look for a new MMO to play. I feel like whenever I sit down to play video games, I have a gut instinct about what game it is that I want to play, whether it's World of Warcraft, whether it's Guild Wars 2, whether it's RuneScape, whether it's Final Fantasy XIV or MapleStory. If I want to play an MMO, I sort of feel like I have the bases covered at this point, and there's plenty of other MMOs that I've never played, like EVE Online, that if I ever want to play a new MMO, those are the ones that are really in my list. Now, I enjoyed playing Throne and Liberty. Don't get me wrong. I'm a big contributor to the day one player base for interesting new MMOs that come out, like Brighter Shores, like Throne and Liberty, these kinds of things, because I like the idea of being there on ground floor. Now, I get a lot of fun out of early game MMOs. It depends long term on if they keep my attention. I'm well known for hyping up games when they first come out because I like the idea of everyone trying it to see if it's something that we like. But a lot of times after 30, 40, 50 hours, I sort of fall out of them. And that's totally okay too. If I get the same length of time out of a game that I didn't even have to pay for what I would have paid $40 for a single player game, and I had fun during that time, that feels like a dub to me. Now, it doesn't feel like a dub for the MMO community because these games can shut down if we're not all playing them, but like, oh well, I guess, you know?
You can think of at least 4 MMORPGs from the past decade that have succeeded. You have Final Fantasy XIV, a game that after it nuked itself in 2011 and relaunched in 2014 as A Realm Reborn, became one of, if not the biggest MMORPG out there. Listen, I'm not trying to diminish the success of this game, but I don't think it would have had the opportunity to get this popular if it was called something like Cat Girl Solve Crime Online.
100%.
Okay, maybe it would have gotten like a really popular if it was called that. A lot of people tried out Final Fantasy XIV because it was called Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
The same goes for Elder Scrolls Online.
This dude is ripping off my ideas, brother. This is so real. I've said this a billion times, that new MMOs, even MMOs like Guild Wars 2, are struggling because they are not attached to an IP that everybody already knows and has these extremely fond memories of. World of Warcraft is a Warcraft game, and Warcraft is a beloved series by old people.
Game that, again, I know has some really good parts to it.
I couldn't even get it out.
But would people have given it a try and really stayed with it if it wasn't part of one of the most iconic RPG series of all time? I think probably not.
Nope,
and then you have 2 of the most iconic MMORPGs released this decade. Old School RuneScape, which is just a re-release of RuneScape as it was in 2007. It's hard to call that a new MMO, but it kind of is. I mean, it's not RuneScape anymore. It's its own beast. And then in 2019, you get World of Warcraft Classic, a game that is still massively popular, despite receiving absolutely no changes in those 5 years since its release. So of the successful MMOs we have in the past decade, 2 of them are from established franchises, and 2 of them are re-releases of games from a lot of people's childhood. That doesn't really show how people want something new, does it? All the MMOs that were, in every sense of the word, new, struggled to stick around. And the way I see it, there's 3 big reasons for that. Reason number 1.
Hey, let's hear these.
I need to check the script. MMORPGs are high investment games. That is no surprise to anyone who plays them. You'll always hear players say, oh, the game gets good at 100 hours. The game gets good at 200 hours. Oh, well, the first 500 hours are actually just a tutorial. And after that, you really start to understand what the game's all about. By the way, bad game design. That's just bad. But the point that gets across. Disagree
Disagree that it's bad game design. I think that in theory, what he's saying is bad game design. A game should be fun from the get-go, and if it's not fun from the get-go, people aren't going to play it. No one's going to stick around to 500 hours to see what the game's actually about. I do agree with that statement. I do not think it's possible to teach somebody what an MMO is about in less than a couple hundred hours at least, because of how much is going on inside of MMOs. You are not going to be in the highest tier of playing until multiple thousands of hours in the game. And if the game has nothing to offer you that is new, from 200 hours to 10,000 hours, why are you going to play the game from 200 hours to 10,000 hours? The problem that I think is in the language that we use to describe what's going on with these games. RuneScape is fun from the get-go. It is a good game from the time you log in. That being said, the first 1,000 hours of RuneScape are the tutorial. The first 5,000 hours of RuneScape are the tutorial. You don't start learning about tick mechanics until like Scurrious, kind of, but that's like a really long time away if you've never played the game before and you're just going in raw dog. Like, it can take you a very long time, especially if you're playing, say, like, you know, without really using the Grand Exchange or buying currency or any of that. If you're doing the work, buddy, it's going to take you a long time to get there. And then, like, you're not even really learning tick mechanics until, like, the fight caves, kind of, but then, like, realistically, it's like raids and late game bosses, and those are a whole new thing once you get there. There's so many things to do, so many games to play inside of RuneScape that's just like, it is all a tutorial. You learn a new thing, and then you learn a new thing after. There's just no, like, the Clippy, the magical staff who shows up, Staffy, the magical staff, oh, that sounds like a staph infection, who's like, oh, this is the how you high out things. That's not, but it's still a tutorial when you get the spell and you click it and you don't understand, like, why would I ever turn my items into gold if I can sell them for more? These kinds of things. Like, you still don't understand what the purpose of high alching is, and you have to learn that thing. That's a tutorial. Like, so it's impossible to not have an MMO that is a giant tutorial all the way through. The whole thing that you want to feel good is the process of learning the game. That's the good game design part.
Is that MMOs are games that you will spend a minimum of hundreds of hours in if you're going to play them to any significant degree.
This is rookie numbers, dude. I've got plenty of friends with 10,000 plus in Path of Exile.
Doubly hard for the genre to get players into new games.
I got no hours.
First of all, you need to convince players to drop the games they've played for hundreds, if not thousands of hours.
Yeah,
and
for
then
at least
you
a
need to
little
convince
while.
them to play your game for hundreds, if not thousands of hours. Sure, you could make an MMO that maybe doesn't need to be played for hundreds, if not thousands of hours, but then you're probably just making like an RPG.
Multiplayer game, yeah.
You should probably just make an RPG, to be honest.
Yeah.
And looking back at that failure rate of MMORPGs, it's really tough to convince yourself to switch to a new game and invest hundreds of hours there when in a year from now, it could all be gone. The game could literally just be shut down. You can feel pretty confident if you're playing games like Elder Scrolls Online, RuneScape, World of Warcraft, that your progress won't be gone anytime soon.
Straight
that
up.
makes it even harder to pull people away from their established.
I've always said that I started playing MMOs again probably about 7 years ago because these games are going to be here for another multiple decades. For sure, almost guaranteed in some state or another, you're going to be able to log into the same characters and continue your journey on. And that learning process of how do I play this game better and better puts you at higher and higher levels, which gives you more and more interesting and fun things to do. So you're like investing in your future fun, and that's why I tend to play the games that I play.
Games. Reason number 2, I'm trying to look like a 2. Beyond just material investment of money and time into existing MMOs, players have an emotional investment into these games. Imagine going up to an iPhone user and being like, hey, try out this cool new Android phone.
Yeah.
It has features that you might find objectively better than your iPhone. They'll look at you first like you're crazy, and then they will spontaneously combust into hellfire. That's just how it works. I don't make the rules. The reason for this is just
Straight
because
up. Yeah, I use an iPhone, and I've talked about this a lot with people. Like, you know, you end up making all these investments in the technology and in the infrastructure and the ecosystem of what you're using, and you just don't ever want to leave it. It's the same thing with why Windows people don't want to switch to Macs and why Mac people don't want to switch to Windows. You know, whatever has become the thing that you use, you understand those workflows really, really well, and then switching over to something else has so much opportunity cost or so much like time sink that you just don't want to do it.
people are creatures of habit. They like what they like. They like the frictionless experience when they want to relax and log onto a game. They don't want to relearn new mechanics or anything like that. So even if a new
They don't want to have to click twice for every single action.
comes out and does have a ton of objectively better features than some of the popular games out there, people will just stick with what they know unless they're given a really, really compelling reason to switch over. And reason number 3, check that out. Just for you. MMORPGs, despite the rise of solo gameplay, are inherently social games, even to this day. No matter how you play these games, there's a good chance you have at least a few friends you talk to while playing it. Maybe it's a guild you're super active in and you do raids and PvP every single week, or it's just a casual leveling guild where you just talk while you do some quests on your own. And even if it's not in the game itself, maybe you're just on a Discord call with a few friends who are playing that same MMO as you, and it's a cool way for you guys to all bond and relax. All of these bonds are built through these MMORPGs, and you can't recreate that through mechanics or graphics or anything on the technical side. A lot of people say that MMORPGs were the original social networks, and I think that's true when you look at how competition works in social networks. Twitter is an objectively bad site. No one likes it. Literally no one likes this site. But the competitors struggle to get any traction because despite having some really great and objectively better features than Twitter, what it doesn't have is all those existing connections you made. Really, the only way we've ever seen massive switches from one social platform to another is when the original just fucks up real bad. You guys might not remember dig.it. It was Reddit before Reddit. Around 2010, they started making some bad decisions repeatedly that made the site just really unusable. Like, it was so dumb, dude. And that's how Reddit got popular. It didn't do anything spectacular out of the box to convince people to leave Dig. Dig convinced people to leave Dig, and Reddit was just there, ready to accept all the refugees. This is something we've seen happen in MMORPGs. About 5 years ago, World of Warcraft was just wrapping up Battle for Azeroth, one of its least popular expansions ever, and it had just released Shadowlands, one of its least popular expansions ever. Doing that back to back is what we call bad. So swarms of frustrated WoW players looking to scratch.
Shadowlands looked so cool. Aesthetically, I think Shadowlands was one of the tippy top design things that Blizzard had ever done. I really liked the ethereal looks to the gothic looks. I thought it was so cool and I wanted to play it so bad. And then you got into Shadowlands and you were just like, I have to be active how many hours a week in this game? Minimum to just be able to do things that I want to do?
That MMO itch in a different way, had to find a new game.
Battle for Azeroth was just dumb though, dude. I hate that they still try to make you go to Battle for Azeroth right off rip. Is like, oh no, I think they take you to the Dragon Isles now, which is good because Battle for Azeroth was, I just didn't enjoy adventuring around there. The Haunted Mansion dungeon was really cool. That's like the only one.
And that game was Final Fantasy XIV. WoW's failures coupled with the pandemic launched Final Fantasy XIV to being the most popular MMO in the world, a title that had belonged to WoW in an almost uninterrupted streak since like 2005. Again, Final Fantasy XIV does some good stuff, but what really pushed people to try it out and stick with it was another game, the titan of the MMO industry, faltering in a big way. What this proves to me, and hopefully to you, is that a new MMO that comes out can genuinely do everything right. But that still might not be enough unless an external factor plays into the success. With these new MMOs,
you know what they should do? They should make monitors that are just like a 1080p monitor, and then around it, there's like a bar that's just for putting UI in video games, and then you can organize your UI onto the outside bar that's like separated by a border so that you can look at the game and it be really pretty without having all this cluttering UI, but still have the UI that you can zip around to and look at. That would be a really good thing. I always want the games to look the way they do in trailers. That's what makes me want to play a game, is because they look so cool in trailers. But then you throw all this UI on there and you're like, fuck me, dude.
Need to be able to do is sustain themselves on not peak player counts at all times, so that hopefully in a few years something does happen that causes a shift. Okay, I know what you're thinking.
Survive is the number one thing in life in general. If you think that you're failing, the fact that you haven't died and given up on your dreams yet is the thing that's honestly your biggest success. Like, you just got to keep waiting, dude. I have friends who went years in just doing absolutely nothing with their lives to end up being in some massive band or having some massive breakthrough with their careers in some kind of way that changed everything. You just got to keep moving, brother. Keep moving and stay passionate about the things that you're passionate about. You never know what's going to open up to you.
And stop thinking that. It's a crime to think that, and I will report you to the cyber police. But I know what else you're thinking, because I'm thinking it too. Maybe your friends and the general MMO player doesn't want a new MMORPG, but you do. You would invest your time into a new game if it was worthy of that time. All right, that's great. Good for you.
No.
Good for you, little guy. Champ? Good for you, champ. Let me ask you this, though.
People who've never found an MMO they love.
What do you want from a new MMORPG? What does it have to convince you that it is worth investing your time into? Do you want a brand new modern MMORPG that maybe genre blends and does things that we've never seen before? Do you want a new MMO that puts a modern twist on the classic design principles? Do you want a Nintendogs MMO? We all want a Nintendogs MMO. I would kill for a Nintendogs MMO.
Yeah, that would be very soothing.
I would kill everyone for you, little guy. But when I
always thought that it would be really, really cool if they would take like the Nintendo 3DS sort of concept and put it to vertical monitors, but then you'd have to have everyone have a vertical monitor in order to play it. Most people aren't going to turn their monitors sideways. But it'd be cool.
Talk to people who play MMORPGs, and I look at the landscape of new MMORPGs, all I see is more of the same. Old School RuneScape and World of Warcraft Classic are two of the most popular MMORPGs out right now. I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I like both of these games a lot, but I think the case is that there's a very thin strip of runway for a new MMO to land on. And if you manage to thread that needle, you'll please the core audience of MMORPGs by maintaining the status quo of the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And a new MMO is going to have a really hard time doing that while differentiating itself from
100%.
the other games out there. Going back to Brighter Shores, my big issue with this game is that it actually feels too much like RuneScape. When I play it, I think, well, if I'm going to spend time here, I guess I should just play RuneScape, which is the better version of Brighter Shores. Yeah. And this was something we saw all the time back in the day when every new MMO was going to be the WoW killer because it did things mostly.
So many MMOs came out that just felt like WoW. I mean, I think one of the biggest ones that I played personally that felt just like WoW was Alad's Online. That game was just a WoW clone, but with different skins and different, whatever. And at the end of the day, you're just like, why am I playing this? Like, why am I playing this game that has no sense of purpose or thing that separates itself from anything else when I could just play World of Warcraft?
Like World of Warcraft, but when players would play it, they would usually leave because all their friends and their time and investment on World of Warcraft was on World of Warcraft. Why would they play a different game that feels like it but slightly different? This mindset of not wanting anything new obviously doesn't apply to every MMO player. I mean,
it's like people who just write songs that are just like other people's songs. Like, why would I listen to your song when I could just, why would I listen to your knockoff crappy, Fiddler song whenever I could just go listen to Fiddler?
Warframe is an extremely popular MMO from the past decade, and it's not like anything else, and it is really successful, but that's the exception that proves the rule. That's a saying I really hate, but I'm going to use it because it proves my point. The question this should naturally lead us to is, what does this mean for the MMORPG genre and its future? Yeah. If you'll join me on the Monopoly board, I'll give you a little business lesson. Competition is good. It makes people innovate. Let's go capitalism. But with so few new MMOs coming out and closures happening more and more every year, except for 2024, you keep going, little guy. Look at you go. The market doesn't have anything to compete against. World of Warcraft can keep doing what World of Warcraft wants to do. New games can keep introducing more microtransactions because where else are you gonna go, little guy? Yeah. I'd like to see you quit. And at this rate, we have new players coming to the genre at a slower rate than veterans are leaving it. I know this is the case because I saw it in a video recently. It was this video. I said it in this video. The only thing that still gives me faith, though, is that I do believe MMORPGs are still truly unique experiences.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Yes, there are more multiplayer games out there that can scratch that social gaming itch.
But it's not like that, no.
MMORPGs still are the only truly persistent, massive world where you can interact with thousands and even hundreds of thousands of players at the same time. It's something unlike any other 100%. Game. And I think one day we'll see a change that revitalizes the genre. Maybe not to the peaks of 2004. I think those days are just behind us, but maybe to a new peak with something totally different. That would be great. I'm not ruling that out. But what I am saying is,
yeah, we don't know what other things are going to feel like, you know? That's such a true statement through and through. And I think that's what he's getting at, is that it doesn't have to be the way that it was for it to be really, really good. It can be something else that's new, that's still really, really good and feels amazing and makes you forget what it used to feel like, or at least makes you not compare everything in the world to that and makes you start comparing things to this. And, you know, maybe peak games with, 1 million players, or peak games with 500,000 players, or peak games with 300,000 players are a whole different kind of MMO experience that we've never had before, and it'll be something unlike anything that we could have expected and anything that we could have predicted, and that would be the next thing that's what we want. And we have no idea, because we don't actually know anything. You think you do. You think you know a lot of things, but you really don't. You're really just a bag of chemicals and electrodes or electrons and just, impulses and desires that you don't even really know what they are. You ever go downstairs and open up the fridge and want there to be something in there, but if you could have anything in the world right now, you wouldn't even really know what that is? That's what we're like when we're trying to pick a new MMO.
that's going to be super hard to do because we're all little goblins and we just want to play our little games and we want to drink Mountain Dew.
We really are goblins.
So the genre is in a tough spot.
Well, good video, Ideal. I really liked it. If you guys aren't subscribed to Ideal already, you definitely should. You should also go and like his video. That's it for this one. I'll see you guys on the next one. If you want to watch another one, there's an end screen popping up right about now where you can choose that. And I will talk to you guys later and be safe out there. Bye.